Perik Yudalet Aleph Parshas Re'eh. Bonim atem l'Hashem Elokechem. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Klal Yisrael, "You are Hashem's children. Los is go to do. You should not lacerate yourselves." In ancient days, when the people would grieve, a person would grieve over somebody who had died, he'd take a piece of pottery and he would start tearing at his flesh. Meaning the pain was so overwhelming, people couldn't contain themselves. That's Los is go to do. Or they'd start pulling the hair out of their heads. Also, as an expression of this level of uncontainable grief, lames, specifically, if you're lacerating yourself or pulling the hair out of your head to grieve over the dead, meaning if a person lost a fortune, financially, although he does this, there's a Torah violation, not permitted to mutilate yourself, because your body is not yours, but this is because you're expressing grief in a way which is beyond the pale, either by laceration or by removing hair from your head. So it's specifically the mess. So Rashi says, "Los is go to do, lo sitnu gedido v'seret b'vsarchem," meaning you shouldn't cause tears in your flesh. Almes kedash amoroyim osid, like the Moriim, the ancient nations, they would do. Fishatem bon shalmokum v'atem ruim lios noim, and it's important that you should have this pleasant presentation, countenance, this pleasant presence, lo gedudim karochim, and not mutilated and with your hair torn out of your head. Beineinechem. Okay, why should you do this? Ki am kodosh. Atol Hashem Elokecho. Because you am kodosh. Because you are a holy nation to Hashem. Ubecho bocha Hashem lios l'olam skula ikol amim. And Hashem has chosen you as to be His treasure, His treasured nation from all the nations. That's why you should not do it. Firstly, you're bonim, Hashem's children, and in addition, because you're God's holy people, and He chose you from all the nations to be His treasure. So over here, I mean, seemingly, Rashi explains why. The reason is that because you should have this pleasant presence and not be mutilated, to have this grotesque type of look that people are like repelled by seeing what you are. So here, this very famous Seforno. You take a look at the Seforno. When does a person reach the level of grief? If God forbid he loses a loved one, because he feels he can't go on living. The pain is so overwhelming. The pain, he can't contain himself. Therefore, he starts tearing at his flesh and pulling the hair out of his head. I'm sure the person should not display that level of worry and pain for the relative who had died. If you have a relative who's even closer to you, and the hope is still good, even though that person is no longer here. Let's say a person had his parent, was his support, was his security, was his confidence, was everything. And that the rug is pulled from under that person. Hashem says, you still have a father, and the father you have is greater than any father. And he's able to provide at a level that nobody could provide. So why are you, of course, a person should be pained. Why should he be pained? Because this Hakor Satov, as the mission tells us in Bava Metzia, a parent brings a child into existence. There's a relationship. There is a beholdenness. And that a person does not have that any longer. Very appropriate for Jay's yard site. So Hashem says, we find in Parshas Mishpatim that you're not permitted to afflict an orphan, because when the orphan calls out, cries out to Hashem, he will listen immediately. Because Hashem is Avi HaYisomim. Hashem is the father of all orphans. He provides for orphans in a very special way. Because the father is not there to provide any longer and to care for the child, Hashem intervenes differently than for anyone else. Therefore, if you go and abuse and afflict the orphan, Hashem says, and that orphan should cry out to me immediately, I will respond like I don't respond to anyone else. It's the same concept. Person, of course, should grieve, should be pained when, God forbid, he loses a loved one. But to be at this level that you can't continue, that this behavior displays that you can't continue, you have a parent who's even more, who's closer. So why are you so consumed with worry that you feel life has come to an end? So it's a breach in your understanding. It's a disrespect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If you should lacerate yourself and stop pulling the hair out of your head. This is the first part of it. Then it says, and you should not do it also because you're an Am Kadosh. What's Am Kadosh? Person said, that may be true, but the reason why you're doing it, because you're concerned for the person who passed away, that you don't know where he is. It's unfortunate his life came to an end. He was denied so much. He had life, and life was taken from him. So the person says he himself is in a good place. The one who's the survivor. Because Hashem is our Father, and He's the provider. It's because of the pain for the person who's not here any longer. The answer is Ki Am Kodesh Hashem Elokecho. V'gam Ki Ein L'Tzar Mio Bishul Nezek Magil Lemes Misoso. When a person dies, a person should not be paying to such a degree for the person because he's no longer here, because he died. Ki Am Kodesh Ato. What does this mean? Mezumen L'Chayil Mabor. Because that person went to the world to come. Asher Shas Koras Ruach Bem Yofe Mikol Chaim Lazeh. It says in Pirkei Avos, one moment of the world to come is more than this whole world encapsulated in one moment. So if that's the case, for yourself, the person who's the mourner, to be consumed with grief to this degree, it's a display of a lack of faith, a lack of understanding of relation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's your Father. He can provide and does provide more than anyone can provide. And he's concerned for you more than any parent is concerned for a child. You're concerned about the person who's no longer here, he's in a better place. Because you're Am Kodosh, he has a relation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Chayil Ma'bo, and one moment of that life is more than the life combined in one moment, and all existence in one moment. Therefore, by behaving this way, it clearly states a lack of internalization of one's belief and one's faith in Hashem. Okay, we can do the halacha.